Okay, so the plan now is, I guess we have until about 6 or maybe a bit after 6 to just open the floor to any questions, suggestions, concerns, anything really with publication processing computer vision. And we have a couple of questions like if we need to kickstart the conversation, but I'm not sure if it's going to be necessary. But so I guess how we'll do it is just if you want to say something, put your hand up, and then when you speak, stand up, and you can even introduce yourself. Does it sound good? Sorry, I skipped you before, so yeah, at the back.
So this is more about your talk on top data. I'm an engineer before I did a master's in AI, and to be honest, I don't think they ever taught us how to do science in a very system. With the written set of rules. At first, you have to come up with the hypothesis, and then the next step, and so on. We've had many discussions about this in our group as well, and now I know all the time. But I thought an interesting way So I thought an interesting way to teach people this is maybe master thesis and bachelor thesis, where you can force them to pre-register with their supervisor at least, and so that their thesis report has to include the initial proposal and then the same rules as this workshop. So that could be a way to teach them if they haven't really taught this. So maybe I will try with my future master student. And second point, you said that so that all these papers, they present these results as if it's the first try, and then they got these excellent results. Yeah, of course, that's not true. But how else could we do it in the current 8-page scenario? I mean, I would also like to see more of a story on how this evolved and all the lessons learned from it. But I can't really see how to best communicate this in the current format in reasonable time.
Yeah, great points. I believe also we have some, let's say, limitation on the paper length, obviously. So we can't put everything there. But there can just simply be such an incentive from the reviewers that if you include some appendix, some link, whatever, that shows your previous experiments, it should be a plus, right? And things that failed. And it's obviously a nice thing for anyone who wants to work on your topic. They can check, okay, what didn't work. They can attempt to make those work, or like they can say, okay, good, I don't need to waste my time. But what's more important is, as you said, from the education perspective, we should start, before starting anything, we should start teaching scientific method, which is hypothesis, starts from a hypothesis, right? And rather than digging into, okay, let's train a cats and dogs classifier. Because that scientific method is really a meta thing. It's like even higher abstraction that you can use that. You have to have that, and you can benefit from that in other aspects of your research career, not only getting a work published.
Small addition about the paper. Do you have a good example or examples of a paper that maybe you think really fits all your requirements for a good paper? So not just saying this was the first try, we got the top result.
No.
Okay.
So I wanted to follow up on the idea of the negative results. So of course it would be amazing to publish everything and have a link and supplementary material, but this, I mean, it takes a lot of time to prepare the nice positive results for the authors, I mean. So I think it is important to set some incentive for the authors to do this. This is why I think an idea, I don't know if it's the best, but an idea is to have like visible tracks on pre-registration where, you know, you present your work, go to the conference, talk to people, get feedback. I think just expecting that we all publish our results, our negative results and everything we did with a link, I think that's tough. Yeah, I think we should find like creative ways of incentivizing that.
So, negative results, the need for negative results being visible, I agree. But for the another concern, I think also mentioned this, that ImageNet generalized to ImageNet, and it turns out that ImageNet does not generalize to ImageNet. But we are omitting a part that the architectures, models, methods were still in the same order. So all of them were brought by 4%, 5%, 10%, and we actually care them as far as everyone is aware that our results are a little bit exaggerated, and that is fine. We are an engineering discipline. We need to strive for, working stuff. So, okay, negative results should be visible. As I agree. But is there anything wrong with exaggerated state of the art results? I don't think so.
For example, I work quite a lot with medical imaging, and so the argument is that, and he is right, the accuracy dropped, I don't know, 4 to 15% when the CFAR10 test data is, CFAR10 is shuffled and there's a new test data, but the order of the architectures that perform best stayed the best. This is maybe this doesn't matter on ImageNet or CFAR10, but it's pretty big deal if you are talking about lung cancer detection and saying 93, oh, it's the same method, and we can expect that, and FDA approval expects that in the real life, then reality is something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm also working in medical field,
Yeah.
so we don't care still. That's not our job. That's the job of the clinical trials. That's the job of the doctors. We just try to publish. And for this thing to be workable in real world, real life, again, that is the concern of, as you said, FDA, not our concern.
I don't agree.
Yeah, also I don't agree that if everyone is basically it's kind of a short point. I don't agree that if everyone is exaggerating on their result, then it's fine, because you can't assume that everyone is going to exaggerate in the same way, and they can assume that someone is going to be more diligent, other people are going to be more sloppy. So I mean, that's just horrible. I think just imagine that that's how you have to read papers. So I think if we can impose a bit more, we can just be a bit more diligent in the process. It will be much easier to read papers, write papers, to gain knowledge from other papers, and just simple. That's it.
Well, I think that maybe the pre-registration will also have some other unintended result. Well, you had this result here at the conference. It means people would remove themselves or their research, if they would then look like a fool. Yeah. So basically, perhaps this would actually lighten the load of the reviewers in the second phase, because there won't be so many papers to review. Yeah. So if you pre-register and then your results go in exactly the opposite way, or the way that you don't like it, many people would probably retract whatever the reason. So maybe in the end there wouldn't be so much stuff to review. Yeah. I mean, you would have higher dropout rate. It wouldn't be bad, right?
Self-removal, absolutely.
Yeah, self-removal.
already going on. So the race to be the first one to publish in maybe adapt a new interesting topic in your own domain. This is very often the process how you get papers. So and I see this problem in the pre-registration maybe even more so, because for nowadays you would probably think that even in the current process when you submit and you get rejected and you have the feeling that it was not fair, the rejection. Maybe someone wants to shoot you down because you have something similar in his pipeline or wants to be more famous first. Then you would just continue because you think you're right, you just publish an archive and you think you gain fame over that. So I see this pre-registration idea more like error-prone or risky in that respect that you might guess on your idea.
So you mean that someone might say do your idea before if they read your paper, like being scooped?
Yeah, in that sense, or I don't know. Just be.
The
idea is that you do not even start experimenting. You first give someone else like your idea before you follow with the experiments.
So there's an idea we have which could solve some of these issues. So the issues are at the moment that the workshop is kind of, the paper length is too short because people want to submit to CPR or something like that. But there's also not that much time, and then people are worried about being scooped. So one way to solve this is to have the pre-registrations not being reviewed. And they could be private as well. So you submit a pre-registration, it's time-stamped, you registered there 6 months ago, and then you submit to CVPR, and then when it gets published, you say, here's the evidence that I pre-registered it. But the disadvantage is that you lose the feedback. The early stage feedback of someone looking at your proposal and saying, this is your hypothesis, I would actually like to see these experiments before you start. So I was wondering how people feel about the pros and cons of registered versus unregistered, reviewed versus unreviewed proposals.
My opinion is that they should always be reviewed because registering is not just flag planting, like I did this first and here's proof for it. Like it's part of a longer process that includes the validation of the hypothesis. You can't just like pre-register whatever comes to mind. Like it should be vetted for quality, and it could be rejected right away for not being interesting or haven't tested before. Anything like that. So I don't think that we should be allowed to just like pre-register without review.
So the concern is like you just pre-register 100 things and then try 10 of them and one works.
Well, it takes time to write the article, so you can't really.
Yeah, but if it's not reviewed, then you can just, as you say, like
No, exactly. No, I agree. It should be
okay.
reviewed.
But definitely we probably don't want people to be flag planting, like just posting a few registrations online. Yeah.
So I heard about this open review platform, so I've not much experience with it, but apparently for, was it NIPS or some conference where they have all the reviews being public, and I don't know, is it like on Stack Overflow where you basically anonymously can take out the paper and criticize it? So, I mean, there are probably in different domains also people who try to come up with a recommender system, right? So like Amazon recommendations, everyone can share their opinion, you can vote others' opinion, and there are different approaches to try to solve a similar task maybe, and then in a democratic fashion, right? So you have, everyone can share their opinion, you can vote on opinions, you can rank all this stuff. So
Have you invented Reddit or something?
yeah.
I just want to say we actually use the open review for this workshop.
Yeah, so
It wasn't open, yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks to our great community, the whole thing usually in high quality conferences are blind review, right? And then the next step was even this open review, because nowadays it's almost kind of a gamble if you get a good reviewer to understand your paper or not. So open review is, the idea is that anyone can review. It had some problems because there have been some detections of people basically creating multiple anonymous accounts to boost their paper or degrade competitor papers. There's some interesting talks now, if you are into this, going on. Something like a stock market model. If the papers you have reviewed gained large amounts of citations through time, your voting gets better. So your voting weight, or like your opinion, is more valuable than the other. So if you are a good estimator of how good or bad a paper is, like a stock market. So this has all other problems, but
what is the disincentive in accepting all papers?
okay, so of course the idea is that to have a platform that your rejections are also basically tracked, and if that one has been accepted later on and got a great result and got great publishing, so your estimation is bad. Yeah. So like a stock market.
Yeah, and also the
Soon the blockchain should appear.
I would just make perhaps the obvious point that there are naturally a few risks to taking a market or popularity-based ranking model. It's very difficult to perform calibration across even subfields of computer vision for citations. You may take the example of someone like Andrew Wiles in mathematics, who I may soon approach in terms of number of citations. Nevertheless, proving Fermat's last theorem may be more significant than the papers I've presented at this conference. So that is a bit of a challenge.
About the peer-review thing, I think as far as I know, in economics, they do it like what you suggested. They just publish in a private repository, and it stays private for a time, I think 6 months or 1 year, I don't remember exactly, and then it becomes public, and that is the way to prevent kind of a flag planting thing, but it may not work for our field because, again, as far as I know, in econ, the publish is like 2 years or something on average, so their precautions and our requirements may not align, but yeah, just to put it out there, like in econ, I think that is the default way of doing things.
Yeah, also commenting on this, one and maybe the most valuable thing about the review is actually improving the paper, right? And I think the amount of papers that are simply just resubmitted, I hope at least, is little, even though having seen similar papers already reviewed by me. But I think the problem is that if a review is really good and you can actually improve the paper, then I think such a metric will be problematic, because the same paper is not going to be resubmitted, but ideally it's going to be an improved or even a different version of the paper. And I think then we have like a bit of a problem trying this.
Actually, more of a question to the audience. So, do you think that the workshop is the right, let's say, vehicle for sort of protocol or not? Because one thing we really observed was that the time is really, really short. So it's like, yeah, we probably started too late, and yeah, the authors did a great job, but yeah, some of them complained that yeah, we didn't have enough time. But anyway, even if we extended the timeline, still there'll be maybe 6 months. But probably for this, like for having like really rigorous experimental evaluation, one would need 9 to 12 months, and it's maybe too much for a workshop which doesn't have much visibility. So what are your thoughts? So we thought, like, I think the best way to do this probably is to have an alternate, like a track in a main conference, like what we suggested before. Anything else, like having a journal, or actually, Andrew Zismer also suggested to have sort of stamp of approval for not a journal or a name track, but it's a way to basically try to just give some visibility and validity to papers that follow this protocol. So yeah, if anyone has
I would say, like, my suggestion would be certainly a journal. That gives you the flexibility of having like a rolling deadline, so you don't have a specific one. But also you could technically like pre-register your hypothesis and research plan with a workshop at a certain date, but then publish the final paper with the results in whatever context you want. So if you can't make this year's CVPR, then you can make next year's ICCV or whatever stuff. Only have a specific joint deadline for the first part, but then the second review, you know, you're done whenever you're done.
start something.
Yeah, I agree with this, and also I think it would be interesting to explore this idea of like main track, not like a track, like a feature track of the conference, where yeah, you have the whole year to prepare the paper for the next time.
Need some political leverage there.
Do you have any
No,
mailing
but
list
from
about
my very personal experience,
No, no,
like this,
It's probably
I
best,
think
yeah.
this is a great workshop for the discussion of the experiment, but I don't think it's like that short time is suitable for.
Yeah.
for
just a simple, do you have probably any mailing list or something something like this? Because, well, this 1 hour discussion will hardly comes with some suitable result, but it should be discussed later. Do you probably have this already?
Do we have like a platform place to discuss? Like a group, you mean?
Well, I'm not discussing the platform, I'm discussing some kind of mailing list when we can understand, well, conversate, discuss what this platform should looks like.
Yeah, we don't have.
Yeah, we didn't think about it, but yeah, it's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Well, it's not very hard to do one.
No, it's not. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, it's maybe as simple as that, yeah. I mean,
You volunteer.
yes, if you want me to do it, I can take a piece of paper and everybody who wants to join will write the email and I make the list. If you want me to do it. If you want to do it yourself, I mean.
You want to do it?
Yes, I can do it easily. I mean.
And I can replace the email here.
Okay, just post I'm a Tolman.
Okay.
Just open the big something where you can type and people may take a photo.
Yeah, what is it? You want to come here? You want to come here and write it? Then maybe that's it.
Oh, Tolman, really?
Yeah, well,
I tell you, Jack.
no.
So maybe something else that was coming up a bit is how to, in general, improve the quality of reviews. Like, seems to be the problem is that, like, from David Forsyth's perspective, we need more rigorous reviews, and how to get it is basically to do more rigorous reviews. But it would be better if we can have some kind of policy level change rather than an individual level change.
I'm going to say this as somebody who's doing an awful job being a workflow chair for one of the conferences right now, but I think one good way of starting is to give very, very clear guidelines for what the review should look like. So that could come from the program chairs or it could come from the area chairs themselves, but really giving instructions of this is what I expect from my reviewers, this is what you should be looking out for. Is there an hypothesis? Yes, no. Is it validated with experimental validation space or standard error on the mean or whatever? And yeah, by providing these like closed answer questions, then we can start educating reviewers on what to look out for, and then make it clear that that's what we are looking for. That's one initial way.
actually also discussed this in our lab, as I also agree the reviews need to be improved. One way we have been discussing is actually for every senior author to submit a paper, it is needed to do 3 reviews. And maybe this could be an improvement to get the real experienced people to review the amount of paper needed for good reviews.
The thing is, different, let's say, venues and journals, they don't have a common communication platform that, okay, you reviewed this many times here and this many times there. I think.
No, I mean, if you submit a paper for CVPR, you need to do 3 reviews for CVPR.
So for that
At the same conference.
That's why do you? That's too much, no?
Well, like
Why
to
do I
do such that
That's
because
We
it's
normally
3
do 10.
Yeah, I know,
it's
but
more than-
I'm not talking about the number, but why only? There's a lack of, let's say, common pooling or like aggregation of how many reviews you have done throughout your life in which conferences or journals. So that's practically a bit difficult. But that's an interesting idea.
Very short. I think that would address the problem of quantity, but not of quality. So I wouldn't assume that senior authors would provide the best reviews. They have the potential to provide the best reviews.
We know what they're.
Sorry.
Also, there's another question. So basically, I'm an undergrad, but I have done reviews for like several times because my supervisor he didn't bother to review the paper he was assigned to, so he passed it on to me. So undergrad has reviewed a few reviewers for my supervisor. So that's basically, so if you assign like paper, if you assign more ways to review the reviews of senior reviewers, but that might not come from the person himself, it might come from undergrad.
Nothing to say.
I agree.
Could it go? He's like, I don't have time to do it. You review it. And so it's like, yeah, most of the time, I mean, I'm last year my PhD, so it's not really like I'm at that point where I can review, but still, somebody might be a senior reviewer, but they might pass it on to somebody else because they just don't have time. Although I do agree that it would definitely there is kind of a good idea is, if you submit a paper with this, you should do a review as well, like a 1-to-1 ratio. Yeah.
Another idea is to implement maybe something similar to what happens with the reproducibility checklist, to create a checklist for submission. So this wouldn't have to come from the area chairs imposing review quality standards on the reviewers, but it would come from the conference imposing a certain structure of papers to the authors. So have you formulated a clear hypothesis, yes or no, and then you have to answer, you can answer no, have you shared your code, you can still answer no and still get your paper accepted, but at least you have to be honest about what you did.
And something about this reproducibility, I believe we have to differentiate replicability and reproducibility. This is kind of using it in a similar sense nowadays, but what I see replicability is just literally you can replicate the exact numbers more or less, more of like a coding thing. But I believe with this clear scientific method of hypothesis and stuff, reproducibility should mean, can I come to the similar conclusions? I'm not talking about a bunch of decimals and numbers, but conclusions of the research.
Yeah, just a very short follow-up to that, I guess. That means to generalize.
Yes.
And we're in machine learning. So just that, I think it needs to be transferable to other domains.
I want to preregister paper for the next workshop, how many professors do the reviews by themselves and how many was proxied to some subordinate?
That's the right word.
Okay, I think it's very hard to plan your whole experience from the very beginning, and your mind may change full time. So one way to solve this is to do iterative improvements of your work as you typically do. So you register some initial setup which you are going to do. Then you provide some experiments and their results. And then you are going to the next stage. Like you came to another idea, new hypothesis which you want to validate, and provide new experiments. And this you can, this way you can converge to some like good results. Then you have this all like part of your research, and you can provide this the entire paper. Like how many steps you need to converge. It may be unreasonable to write everything inside the paper, but you can summarize it briefly and provide the extended experience of what you do.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think protocol does not really mean recipe. It just means the rules you're going to follow. So for example, if you say, I'm going to say it converges when the line looks flat, that's a bit fuzzy, but it's a way. But you can also have a more definite criteria like, you know, less than 1% change to the training loss. That's when you stop, and that's a rule. I mean, you can have that in your initial description, and I think most reviewers will be very happy with something like that. You don't need to say that it's going to be 90 bucks. You can say what are the rules you're going to follow, because and have you know, very clever ways. You know, basically encode. You can even encode a lot of rules of thumb in that, and I think that still respects the spirit. I don't know about the statistics, like the statistics side, but I still think that with respect to spirit, it's very easy to do. So less of a burden for you. It's what you would think about anyway when you would be running the experiments. You just do it a bit earlier. Yeah.
If I can add something related to what I mentioned in my talk, like I think one way to get around that potential shortcoming of pre-registration is to instead move to like a blind analysis. So you can iterate over exactly which choices you make in your analysis and figure out that some of them were wrong initially, and they don't allow you to account for that specific edge case because you didn't even think about it. But now it's really important and you should really address it, but you know, you might potentially feel forced not to change your protocol at all if you have pre-registered a specific recipe. Instead, if you use something like line analysis, then you're able to continue debugging and changing your analysis without incurring in the cost of potentially biasing your results. So I think that's one advantage of line analysis.
Thanks. Oh, so yeah, that's a great point actually. So I guess you can easily accommodate a less standard version of what the pre-registration looks like, where you do blind analysis. So I guess this is just off the top of my head, and you could basically write the whole paper as you're used to, but leave exactly the some blind parts. So I don't know, leave some data sets, leave some variations of the evaluation for later. Like really hold on to a test set, and you can then ask for the feedback, and then actually do the deblind it essentially. So I think that kind of thing, maybe you know, it would allow you to actually do a lot of those adaptive types of you know, change things as you discover them, but still have a final phase where you know the rubber hits the road.
One quick
Yeah.
we will be doing part of the process about at least 2 experiments running exactly basically the same experiment, and then we check that both results agree, otherwise they're essentially.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting protocol. I just wonder if everyone will like line up to propose ideas, and then the experimental part won't be as popular, but it's just a matter, I guess, of culture and or like promoting it right.
Yeah, not everyone's born a theorist, so I don't know. I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
doing the experimentation.
I mean,
I'm looking through this list and I'm going to the point 6 and well, whichever system we implement, it's a lot of them ends up with 3 situations. First, pre-register was made, then paper was accepted. Okay, it's worked. Pre-registration was made, paper wasn't accepted because the results was bad. It's second. And third, pre-registration was made and experiments shows up that this approach is bad, and I write it into the system. Now, one of the biggest pluses of the system of the pre-registration is the possibility to look for the failed approaches, isn't it? But to achieve this, we need some kind to stimulate the authors to at least register the fact of failing. People not normally interested, even if they did pre-registration and support the idea, well, when you are failed, it's not very pleasant to highlight this fact, especially if you, well, no stimulus to do it. So I propose to think about what kind of stimulus may be proposed, not for the pre-registration, but for registration of failing after the pre-registration.
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess if you don't know a priori if you're going to get a positive or negative result, that's a way to get you to publish a negative result. So it's kind of a bit of a catch, but that's one way. So you already went to the trouble of writing, doing the experiments, you got a negative result, but you just basically do a very tiny final report, and that's a negative result. So it's low effort by the time you get to that stage where you actually know it's a negative result.
You think the facts of pre-registration will make the stimuli by itself?
Yes, it's kind of balances by itself, but I'm sure there are other ways.
I think also the fact of presenting it is an incentive. Like, you know, I presented my negative results today. In 2 minutes I got like a few suggestions and ideas, and also doing the poster. So I think if we enable this possibility, that's super interesting and I would be willing to do it, personally.
I mean, the incentive is the same as usually we get citations. So, I mean, I've written papers where I've said, okay, this paper and this paper have observed this phenomenon, but this other paper has actually refuted it or hasn't been able to replicate it. And I still cited like the negative result as well. So why not? It's a thing.
So I think something that's important to recognize in our field is that experimentation is relatively cheap relative to doing clinical studies or running something on a large hadron collider. And so you kind of can run into the problem where if we required pre-registration on a fixed date for the next ICCV, let's say, you know, I could go through the effort to pre-register, and then I could potentially, you know, be conclusively a negative result a week later. And then I'm kind of, you know, either that's all I'm going to do for ICCV, or I'm totally locked out. You know, I don't know. So, I mean, I think something that would minimally be required would be some sort of like rolling pre-registration, so that, you know, if I know I have nothing to do for the next 6 months, year, whatever, I should at least be able to start something new.
pre-registration are peer-reviewed, so they have to be at least reasonable and interesting ideas. So you cannot just, okay, I want to go to ICCV, I'm going to propose this, if it doesn't work, whatever. Like, it will be, it takes time to prepare the pre-registration, it takes time to review it, and it has to be interesting, because otherwise it would be simply rejected. It's what we discussed before about like the reviewers being in general good predictors of the future performance of the ideas. So.
And even if it doesn't work, you can do just more experiments on why it doesn't work and just, to extend the next 4 months on that.
Yeah, basically, I was about to say exactly that. Like, I think we should give enough care and time, as much care and time as we do to positive results. So if it doesn't work, fine, like, let's document it and put just as much work into, like, figuring out why it doesn't work, what doesn't work, like, run some diagnostics, and then it will take just as long as hopefully writing a positive result otherwise. Like, that means that there's some sort of a balance in your effort. So,
Just evolve into people then making all the changes necessary to make it work, and then like every negative result will then turn into a positive result.
I mean, that's what happens at the moment, but I think like we should actually spend more time documenting like what doesn't work, and and actually documenting it properly. That's being something that we want to create, I think, pre-registration. Because it's easy to oftentimes just like move on and just be like, oh yeah, I forgot this thing, and yet again, and then we always miss that one step of truly understanding. Okay, wait, why did adding this one thing solve it? What was wrong to begin with? And what was your thought process that led you to try that one thing that didn't work? Like, it means that at least consciously, like, you knew what was possibly going wrong, and that I'm not used, maybe I don't know why that didn't work. So if you were to be able to document that and figure it out, I think that would be useful.
No, I think that just sort of becomes, I don't know, it's different than how I was envisioning the pre-registration process. Like, I didn't see what it looked like for this workshop, but the ability to do sort of follow-up pieces that can change once you actually saw experimental results, that would actually.
So maybe just from my perspective on it, my view was always that if you made changes to the protocol, that would still be something that was acceptable to include in the paper. The clear distinction, I guess, that we're trying to draw is purely whether those results have come after making your hypothesis and seeing the data. So, as a reader of the paper, currently I don't have any ability to differentiate between hypotheses that are drawn after seeing the data, but simply by having the pre-registered copy and then seeing results that are clear diff from the pre-registration, it's still very useful for me because I can think, okay, these results are interesting, they found something that works maybe 4 nights before the deadline, but I'm not going to expect it to generalize in the same way that I would do if it was like a hypothesis that you see before seeing results. I guess that would be my perspective, because it would still allow changes, you just have a much clearer distinction as to what value they are.
Try to be short. Sorry to use again my own experience with the workshop, but I think I learned a lot from it. So, for example, I showed that what I proposed at the beginning didn't work as I expected, and I found that relatively early, but then I spent a lot of time trying to understand why. I didn't want to come here and just say, guys, what, like, it didn't work. Questions? Like, I wanted to understand why and possibly enable a discussion, try to give the proper feedback about what I learned. So I think that's something that's part of the pre-registration process. You don't stop just when you get your results.
We're probably coming towards the end, so if anyone has anything that they wanted to say that they haven't said yet, it's a good time to hand up and say it.
Would you be so kind to send some review of your beautiful notes?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll just find that.
Send it to Tolman.
One idea I had on review quality is that maybe it would make sense to do, as a conference, a tutorial on reviewing with statistical tools. Because I'm not sure if it's that, if people really put an effort to teach their PhD students that,
first year, yeah, I mean, as someone said before, yeah, lots master students and first year PhD, they should really, there should be a course where it's okay, research ethics and statistical things like statistics and whatnot, and just try to just drive the certain type of publication. But when you start a PhD, there is a lot of pressure to publish as soon as possible, and yeah, these all these things like get forgotten a bit. So
Not much pressure to publish negative.
So one comment also on the review quality. Do you think it would help both, let's say, starters as well as the review quality if the reviews were public?
the reviews were public. Yeah, I mean it's not directly related with the presentation model, but I do think that public reviews are useful. I like the ICLR model. I think, I just submitted once, and the process was like very useful for me, and it was much more work because it was like back and forth, and I think at the end there were 30 posts on the paper, which is really a lot.
Oh, hang on, I didn't mean
Oh, maybe I didn't
understand. I meant like making them public after the review.
But like for the preregister model specifically.
With the names.
Yeah, maybe even with names.
But you mean just for the preregister model, like a registration workshop, or in general?
Yeah, maybe you can comment on both.
In general,
Yeah, I mean, possibly, yes. I mean, I think Neurix is already doing this process something similar, because their viewers see each other's names, and I think also ICML. I think that, in a sense, is helpful in a way, but it's also awkward in another way, because if you see that your core reviewer is like a big name and you're not, and yeah, that's gonna bias you. So, yeah.
Another thing that some journals do is to publish the names of the reviewers along with the paper after it's been accepted, so that if it's low quality, it's not just the authors that get blamed, but all of the reviewers as well. Now, in that case, most of the times the reviews are not published, the names are, so it's an incentive to only let through high quality papers in theory. So I don't know if it works or not, but
I have a slightly interesting anecdote that I have a friend who does mathematics, and I asked him if his field was crazy with archive following everything all the time. He said, no, we're all too afraid of making a mistake, and at least if you make a mistake and it's reviewed, then you can blame the reviewers as well. Whereas we don't really have that culture, I guess.
Nice.
Maybe we should wrap it up.
They're outside there, like.
When we come out and there's nothing.
It's like trying to produce some noise to...
No, but they're literally no
Thank
one.
you, everyone. It's great to see so many people interested in these issues, and it's been a really great day for us. So thanks a lot for coming.